Well, Dick's, I have Elliot's bio here, which Dick just gave. I'll read it anyway. Elliot, you're on? I see
Yes,
you're
can you
here.
hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, good.
Great.
Let me read your bio here. Elliot, well, first of all, he's the CEO of Wheel It Forward, as Joe described a little bit earlier. Elliot was born on the front seat of a 1964 Chrysler New Yorker. As it sped through the streets of Brooklyn, New York, the exact location of his birth remains a mystery till this day. After graduating from NYU, he spent 25 years working on Wall Street, during which time he co-founded and managed two hedge funds firms, Harbor Capital Management, LLC, and Westlane Capital Management, LLC. He served on public company and private company boards and is active in local charitable organizations. After his Wall Street career, he co-founded GoTo.com, an internet startup in search of space, which was sold in 2018. He's also written, as Dick just mentioned, two children's books, The Safety Pin and Bat in the Bunk, both part of his Summer Camp Stories series, which retell fun, zany, and educational adventures from his summer camp days. As a wannabe cyclist, Elliot has biked across America with his sons and halfway across America with his daughter. He's currently a volunteer in the Child Life Department at Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital. Has lived in Stanford for over 25 years with his wife, Diane. Diane, by the way, is the CEO of the United Federation here in Stanford. While chaperoning a month-long 8th grade trip to Israel with 30 students in the group, he visited an organization called Yad Sarah, which is run by 6,000 volunteers and is the library for durable medical equipment for all Israelis, rich and poor, young and old, Jews, Arabs, and Christians. After returning and researching what's going on in this space in the United States, he and his team founded Wheel It Forward to act as a library for durable medical equipment, which Joe kind of described earlier, with the goal of contemplating processes and procedures and sharing them with other communities across the United States.
I'm right here.
Elliot, welcome to SMAS. We're very interested to hear what you have to say, and you are on.
Okay, thank you, Stu, and thank all of you for inviting me to tell you kind of about what we're doing. I'll take a minute. Well, really, Stu has told you about what I've done, how I stumbled into this idea. It's harder to get an invite to this group than it was to like the Bruce Springsteen concert on Broadway. So I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to talk to you and tell you what we're doing. So as Stu mentioned, I spent a lot of time on Wall Street. I was also Dick Fisher's neighbor, which is always a claim to fame. And we miss the Fishers in my neighborhood. But in 2018, as Stu alluded to, I was kind of winding up a co-founding position at GoTo.com. I knew it was coming to the end. I was asked to chaperone a trip from the Bicultural Day School, and I was curious about what was going to be next for me. And I had lunch with a friend, some of you may know, his name is Fred Springer, before I left. And I said, Fred, there's gotta be another great idea out there. Like the library, it just doesn't involve books. It's something else. I've always been enamored with the concept of a library. It's really important. It's changed people's lives, but there had to be something else. And was sitting on this, the bus in Israel, taking us to this place called Yad Sarah, which was founded 40 years ago by a guy in his basement in Israel. Sat through that presentation. Basically over a 40-year period, they have built this out there, and they've changed the way people view the use and reuse of durable medical equipment. So you could literally be living on the beach in Herzliya in a $5 million home. If you sprain your leg, you're going to need a wheelchair or knee scooter or whatever it is. You're calling out Sarah, you'll have what you need by the end of the day, and you'll return it when you're done. And it's clean, it works, and Why would anybody buy this stuff? Came back here and started to research the space both locally and nationally. And locally, there are fewer places doing this around our area in Fairfield County than there were 5 or 10 years ago. And nationally, there's not a lot out there either. So generally, these places are called lending closets, which is a name that we don't like because a closet by its nature is constrictive. And what's missing from a lot of these places is velocity, the stuff coming in, stuff going out, people being aware that this is a community resource that we could all be using. And so what happens in a lot of lending closets is people have stuff to donate, the closet gets full, there isn't that much demand for things because people don't know about it, and then stuff starts getting thrown out. So the people in these places are doing wonderful work, important work. Lending closets are usually viewed as a resource for the poor, which is obviously the people who we want to help most. But what I saw in Israel was the opportunity to make this a resource for all, which increases awareness, which increases velocity, which increases funding, and can increase the impact you have both on people's lives and on the environment. So again, locally, there used to be a place in Greenwich, the American Red Cross used to do this. There was a place in Hartford called NEAT. They used to do this. Right now, there's a place in Milford called Emma's Closet, and there's a place in Guilford called Charlie's Closet. They're church-based, faith-based run groups. They do wonderful things. But the odds are most of you have never heard of it. And if you don't have the resources, you start, kind of scrounging around to try to find something. If you do have the resources, often Medicare and Medicaid will pay for things, but it's gotten harder and harder. And they don't cover certain categories of products, like typically bath type products, shower seats, that sort of thing, are not always covered. One of the things that drives our team after studying what's been going on is there are two facts that equal an incredible opportunity. The first fact is that the average piece of durable medical equipment has a lifespan of 5 to 10 years and is used for 4 months. And we all kind of know what happens to it after that. It goes into a garage, it goes into an attic, and then it goes into the garbage because nobody knows what to do with it, especially around here and in most other places in America. The other fact is that the out-of-pocket expense for durable medical equipment in our blessed country is proportionally 3 times the out-of-pocket expense for prescription drugs. So we all know about and hear about the challenges in terms of people being able to afford prescription drugs. But the truth is if you need durable medical equipment, the out of pocket is out of sight. Very often it's just not covered at all, and it's a real challenge. And so what drives our team is what we call the question, which is, wouldn't it be great if there were a place, a brand, a library that everybody knows about, where that vast supply of lightly used durable medical equipment can meet the even greater demand for those pieces of equipment. And so that's what we've been building out over the last, I started this in my garage over a year ago, didn't intend on lending things out until we formed the organization from a liability perspective. Within a month, having a network is in quotes, of 2 nurses. One was a hospice nurse, one was a rehab nurse. My 2-car garage was filled with like new, very often literally new, durable medical equipment. Last winter, my wife could not park in the garage. We worked it out, and she was a good sport about it. But we basically incorporated Wheel It Forward in June of this year. We held our first board meeting in August. We've got a great team of people with experience in healthcare, sanitization, logistics, law, finance. It's really a great team. We've never sat in the same room together, which is kind of sad, but one day we will. And we were given space in the senior center within the government center at 888 Washington Boulevard until the seniors come back, which has worked out very well, because if any of you are familiar with this space, there's direct access from the third level of the parking garage. And so we have people dropping stuff off socially distant right near the senior center door. And also we leave stuff outside for people to pick up. And we come to work every day and it looks a little bit like the old TV show Sanford and Sons. I can't get that theme song out of my mind, but we try to keep it clean and keep everything orderly. And so far, so good. In November, we had 70 people reach out to us to either borrow or donate equipment. We couldn't help all of them, but we were able to help a lot of them. Initially, there was many more things coming in than going out, because when people hear of this concept, this library, their first reaction is, oh, I could finally get rid of that wheelchair or Hoyer lift that's been sitting in my garage for the last 3 years that nobody ever used. And so we anticipated that. It's somewhat of a storage logistics issue, which we were ready for. So 70 people reached out to either borrow or donate equipment in November. We had 150 people reach out in the month of December to either borrow or donate stuff. And we just don't have time to count January until January's over. But I don't know if it's 100% growth, but it's significant. And in a COVID type of world, it's definitely a challenge. Again, this is a community library. We're trying to get everybody from the community involved. Until Thanksgiving time, roughly, we had teams of people from Ableist come and volunteer to help us sanitize equipment and kind of, take care of inventory management type of things. When Thanksgiving, that was the week of Thanksgiving, the board kind of made a decision that we should kind of hold off on having them come, just from a COVID perspective. I mean, they were terrific. They come in like an army, they get things done, and we miss them, and we'll look forward to them, coming back soon. What else can I tell you? So let me give you a flavor of kind of what's out there in America. And one thing that we're doing is we have about 5 interns over the last few months who are going state by state and cataloging every durable medical equipment lending organization in America. We're doing that for a couple of reasons. Number one, I get calls several times a week of somebody saying, hey, I used to live in Stanford, I live in Denver, do you know where I could get a hospital bed near Denver, right? Or I want to donate stuff. I'm getting a few calls like that a week. The person at American Friends of Yad Sarah, who sits in New York City and raises money for that organization there, gets several calls, a week. And so wouldn't it be great if there was a database where anybody could go put in their zip code and find what's out there? And so the goal is we've done 40 states already. We've already been helpful to some people who have just randomly reached out to us. We just point them to this information. So that's one reason why we're doing it. The other reason why we're doing it is because in order to know what the opportunity is to help spread this concept, we have to know what's out there. And the truth is, nobody knows what's out there collectively, because none of these places talk to each other. So the first place that I called when coming back to America, and I have to tell you, when I would call places, I would say, okay, this is the place, it's being done everywhere, I can stop. I don't need to do this. As much as it interested me, I was hoping to find the place that, I just didn't know about, but I've never found that place. So there's a place in Pasadena, it's called the Convalescent Aid Society, 96-year-old organization. And we all know there aren't many for-profit or not-for-profit organizations that have existed for 96 years. They have a lending library of 30,000 items. It's the biggest one by far, by multiples. And they lend out about 10,000 items a year. And I've become friendly with the CEO, who's been there for about 5 years. And I went to visit them in Pasadena. They have one location, a storefront, and it is the size of roughly the Starbucks on High Ridge Road, like a bigger Starbucks. And then the question is, how can that be, right? How can you have 30,000 things made up of wheelchairs, hospital beds, walkers, commodes? and fit in that Starbucks, because there are about 50 tables in that Starbucks. And the answer is that they have velocity, and that the demand for this stuff so much exceeds the supply that stuff comes in, it gets sanitized, it gets inspected, and it goes out even after 96 years. And so that to me is kind of the model, where you have that sort of movement, you have that sort of awareness, and everybody's using it as a resource. The Convalescent Aid Society is, it's a not-for-profit. They don't really run on a lot of volunteers. They have about 10 or 15 paid people. And they, they're obviously very efficient, but what I want to highlight about them and all of these places that have any sort of volume is that they measurably pay for themselves, right? And when I say that, what I mean is that many not-for-profit ideas are wonderful ideas, much more important than what we're doing, but it's hard to measure the impact that you're making in a pure dollar sense. So if you're doing an after-school lunch program, much more important than what we're doing. You're feeding people who are hungry, but it's hard to measure it. You know you're doing good. This is something that's very measurable. Based on my Wall Street experience, it's always nice to be able to point to numbers and say, hey, this is working, or maybe this isn't going to work. I don't know. We're going to see. But the way that this is measurable is quite simple. It's basically somebody borrows something, you know what that item would have cost to an insurance company, more likely to an individual and to society in general, and you record that cost. You also know what that item weighed, so you know what you're keeping potentially out of a landfill, or what never needed to be produced and packaged and shipped and all that sort of thing. So based on my research, looking at the probably fewer than 20 places across America that have any sort of volume, these places pay for themselves 3 to 1, right? So you invest $1 and you're saving $3 every year. I mean, that's almost better than the return on Apple stock. So let me give you an example of one of those places. It's called Able Tech, and it's in Oklahoma. So we all think here in the Northeast, we're smarter than the people in Oklahoma, and obviously that's not true. But Oklahoma is one of 3 states where Medicaid dollars goes to pay for running one of these lending organizations. And so Medicaid pays Able Tech $300,000 a year to run the entire organization. There are no volunteers, it's professionally run. And every time somebody borrows stuff, and it's open only to Medicaid patients, every time somebody borrows something, they enter the Medicaid code, the cost associated with that code. And over the last 4 years since they've been doing this, that number has exceeded over $1 million. So it's a no-brainer. It's green. It's helping people. And my point is it's measurable and it pays for itself. And so that, in addition to the impact that we're having on people's lives, which is, it's a profound impact, especially for people who can't afford things and really need them. In addition to that, again, the concept of this just making a lot of sense economically is, to me, is very powerful. And lastly, it's this is green. So what our goals are really to template all of our technology, all of our processes. We're building that out now. It's probably going to take another 12 to 18 months to really figure out. And we're open to the fact that any startup, very often a startup doesn't end up where it thinks it's going to end up. It starts off on one level. So just as an example, our business model is obviously to raise money through donations, but also to have a suggested donation related to each item. So for example, a knee scooter might be $30 or $40. A wheelchair, the suggested donation might be $30 or $40. A hospital bed is probably closer to $200 or $250. And what we found so far, which is early on, and the numbers are small, so it's hard to extrapolate out to when we're going to get when we have much more volume, about 30 to 40% of people are actually making the suggested donations. So through the end of the year, we had lent out 60 items. So that was roughly October, November, December. We lent out a total of 60 items. In January, we're probably going to lend out 80 items. So the volume is increasing, very significantly. We need to try to keep up with that. Like any startup, having no customers is a big problem, and having too many customers is a problem. And we've been able to manage things so far, and we're thankful for that. But we'll see how things progress. Just as organizationally, over the next few months, we need to find new space, because we're hopeful that the seniors are coming back soon to the senior center. And we've been actively looking for space at houses of worship. I'm speaking later today to the general manager of the Stamford Mall. We're really trying to think out of the box. We've visited space in kind of traditional warehouse space, and that's one of our very short-term type of challenges. The other good news about lending out more things, which I think we will continue to do, is you then require less space. And so that's how basically the Convalescent Aid Society works. Everything is kind of out of the office, out of the warehouse, and that's obviously a wonderful scenario. So I guess to sum up, what we're trying to do is 3 things with one new idea. We're trying to meaningfully impact people's lives. We're trying to measurably save individuals and society a lot of money. And we're trying to do our part in being green and keeping literally tons of things from prematurely heading into landfills. And we think it's possible. I think the board itself almost feels like we have a responsibility to this idea to make it work. And we're looking for volunteers, because the only way we can scale this is through volunteers. We're working on ways to do that socially distanced. I mentioned all the reach outs that we're getting and continue to get. And just to give you an example, we're serving Fairfield County and the New York and the local New York areas. And we've had one person in the city of Bridgeport borrow 2 things. They borrowed a hospital bed and a toilet riser seat. But, that's not even scratching the surface of anything. And so we've had 25 people from Greenwich borrow things, and there's a lot of lower income housing in Greenwich. If we've proven anything from my perspective in terms of this being a success down the road, one of the questions we had was, would people who could afford this stuff view this as a library, as a resource, where if they needed a knee scooter because they're having Achilles surgery and they're going to need a knee scooter for 2 months, would they come to us and borrow a knee scooter? And I have to tell you, the answer is yes. We have had more people borrow stuff from us who could have easily afforded it. They've made nice suggested donations. We had somebody borrow a $200 knee scooter and wrote us out a check for $400. So that almost by itself points to the ability to succeed, because for sure, people who can afford it will have found us and will find us in much greater numbers. And so that's been exciting for us. I don't know if any of you have seen our website. It's what we're calling a first in America type website, where you can go, you could join the library, you could look at our inventory, you could reserve equipment, you could sign a liability release, and you could make a suggested donation, all from the site. And again, it's the concept. This concept isn't totally new. There are these lending closets out there, but once you've seen what they're doing at Yad Sarah, you realize that there's a way to look at this through a different lens, and that's where the opportunity is. There might be reasons, like I said, that this doesn't work. It took us 6 months and 4 insurance brokers to get insurance for what we're doing. And at the end of the day, it wasn't that expensive. It was kind of the budget that we had just put down a number of like $5,000, and it was actually a little bit less than that. There are other reasons why this might not work that we don't know of yet, but support from the community, support from politicians and people who hear it has been very encouraging. And the last thing I'll say is this is a really good idea. This is just an execution story, right? It just makes so much sense. And the question is, can we execute? And we'll know that in the next 12 months. And I look forward to any questions that any of you have.
Thank you, Elliot. That was terrific. Anyone have any questions? Just raise your hand from the participant screen and we'll call on you. Joe, did you have a question?
Yeah, since I can't raise my hand, I just did the next blue thing.
I saw it.
Elliot, thank you for your presentation. I didn't get, how do you get the word out that this program is available?
That's a good question. And what's nice about that, what's nice about what we're doing is it's kind of targeted. We want the word out to everybody, but in terms of finding the supply and demand, there's I'd call it a network of caregivers. There's a network of medical type people. So just in the last few days, we just spoke to the discharge nurses and caseworkers at Stanford Hospital, right? So somebody's leaving the hospital, they can't let them out of the hospital, their patient out of the hospital until they know they could go home into a safe environment. They need a commode, they need a hospital bed. We want to be a resource for them because people have a few choices of where they can go. We want to be on that menu of where people can get equipment from.
Yeah, because based on my wife's recent history problems, although she didn't need a lot of it, getting to places like Casena nursing home, where people are there for 3 or 4 weeks if they get out of the hospital and have to go home, and they still need the toilet seats or the whatever aids they need. The home health care providers, Medisys, various organizations like that deem that the person may need something when they come to the home visits. I mean, these are areas that they see the actual patient and what they need.
Yeah, so we're getting in front of those people, and our job is to have them routinely refer people to us because we're the library, right? And that's a challenge because that's an early challenge. We're going to figure this out. But what's going to happen is eventually we're going to get this concept into the public purview. Like, people don't know what we are. They're like, well, what does this cost to rent? Well, it's free. It's a library. If you can make a suggested donation, that's wonderful. If you can't, that's okay. So that's our challenge. I spoke to a First Selectman group in Greenwich, which was about 50 people, including the chief of police. And he asked a question. He said, what if we need equipment after hours, right? Because sometimes I guess they run into a scenario, somebody needs equipment, it's late. And I basically gave him my cell phone number, and there are other people who are happy to help. And to the extent that we can, that's great. A woman called Friday afternoon, last Friday, and she needed a couple of things for her dad who was coming back from a procedure. And she probably wouldn't have been able to get some of those things until Monday. But we have them, they're here. We're happy to lend them to them. And so it could serve that sort of a role also. But this is a new thing. And, the dream would be that 5 or 10 years from now, no matter where you are in America, if you need something, you'll think of going to the library to get it, if it's a wheelchair or whatever, and you'll return it when you're done. that's the dream. That's aspirational. I don't know that I'm gonna get there, but hopefully it will.
Good.
Get on.
Peter Fortman.
Yeah, the question I had was, Elliot, how do big pieces of equipment like hospital beds get delivered to the sick person?
So that's also a great question and something where we've been grappling with a little bit. So it's easy to find volunteers, not easy, but you can find volunteers who could pick up a hospital bed. The home hospital bed basically comes apart into about 5 or 6 pieces and fits in the back of my Mazda 3 hatchback, which is a rather small car. You know, you need some strength to do that. Most lending closets across America don't do it because they are typically run by older people who don't necessarily have the strength to be moving this stuff around. It's an issue. So we've been able to collect hospital beds. We've also, everybody's a volunteer. The only people who we pay are people who install hospital beds for us, because eventually after COVID, and you know, we can run training seminars on how to put together a hospital bed, because after all, they're just 5 or 6 pieces and they don't even require tools. But for the moment, we have 2 people who are very professional who will install hospital beds. Most places in America that do lend out hospital beds have mandatory fees. So for example, that place in Pasadena charges $200. They don't charge for anything else. They charge $200. There's a place in Florida called Clinics Can Help. Again, where that name comes from, I don't know. And they charge $200 plus a setup fee of $150. So if we did that, we could make money from that transaction, because we could get a hospital bed installed for significantly less than that. We haven't gone there yet. We're figuring things out, but the short answer is it's not for the average person to do that. The reason we don't want to lend out a hospital bed and have somebody just pick it up and lend it out is what we learned from other people's experiences is people then take it home in those 5 pieces and they can't put it together, right? So then that creates a backlash. So better to spend $100 or $200 to have it professionally installed than deal with that issue. Right now, hospital beds, I don't know if any of you have been to the senior center in Stanford, the hospital beds and some of the bigger equipment we have is still in my garage. The good news is I was able to free up enough space in my garage, one of the spaces for my wife to park. So we're all good with that.
Okay. Larry.
Thanks for an excellent presentation, Elliot. Have you gotten any negative feedback from people who sell these items for a profit? Whether they be manufacturers or retailers or hospitals?
So we haven't yet. I have spoken to the head of Drive Sales. Drive Medical is a huge manufacturer. There are only a few players in this entire space. They had offered to help in that they get a lot of returns to them. You know, some things scratched or whatever. And they have their warehouses. I think one of them is in New Jersey. If it was closer by, you know, they had offered to help. Short term, you know, I see the issue. I understand it. I don't think we're putting anybody out of business. That's definitely not our goal. But it might be an issue for some people at some point. You know, most of the people who are going to borrow stuff from us aren't going to have the resources to pay for it. So I'll give you an example. One of our board members was at Goodwill donating stuff, runs into a guy, he was in the store actually, this was pre-COVID, runs into a guy in front of him asking if they sell rollators. Because his mom needs a rollator. He had just been to R.A. Caldwell. They were like $179. He doesn't have $179. And so Goodwill does not do durable medical equipment. They won't accept it here, and they don't sell it. There are Goodwills across the country. In Batesville, Arkansas, Goodwill has a shed outside where you could put in your stuff. Nobody will ever look at it. No one cleans it. Nobody does anything. Or you can go and pick up stuff. If something's in there, you're welcome to take it. So there's different models of Goodwills. But anyway, our board member future board member was behind this guy whose name was Tim, who's an Uber driver, and, called me and said, I got a guy who can get you a rollator. And I met Tim at the back of what was High Ridge Printing on High Ridge Road. And I brought him a rollator, I brought him a commode. Tim called me a few months after, asked me for a few other pieces of equipment, which there was no way they could have afforded. One of the issues in this space is, look, if you need a shower tub seat, it costs $50. You could find one for $30. You could find one for $100. That's what it costs. But the likelihood is if you need that, you probably need 4 or 5 other things that all of a sudden you're talking hundreds and hundreds of dollars and maybe thousands of dollars. And so Tim, he probably borrowed 4 or 5 things from us over a period of time. And this was before we officially even launched. And my friend said, we're never going to get this stuff back. And we know that we're never going to get certain things back. But Tim called me about a month ago and he said, I'm on my way to my mother's funeral and I want to get the stuff back to you. And he actually did. And we met, a few weeks later and we got the things back, which again, we're not being overly, we're not concerned if we don't get certain things back. People are willing to use this as a library. We've lent out through today, I think it's about 138 items, which is double what it was the total of, the end of December. And we've already gotten like 25 things back. And we anticipate getting a lot more stuff. We're picking up a hospital bed today as we speak from somebody who borrowed it a few months ago, whose mom was coming over from the hospital. And we're delivering either 1 or 2 hospital beds today to people who need it. And hospital beds, it's very hard to qualify to get a hospital bed. From my understanding from Medicare, Medicaid, you have to be in very bad condition to qualify. And so you have all these people that would really benefit from one, but can't afford $200 a month or $1,500 to buy one. And so we have probably 15 of them. We feel like if we had the capacity, and somebody had just asked that question about what do you do about hospital beds? If we had the capacity, we could either install or collect a hospital bed probably every day. And that's where we are right now. And, we're really just starting. So there's a lot of things out there. And our challenge is to manage it and to grow into it and to figure this out. Because I'm just a guy who's written a couple of children's picture books.
Thank you. Brian McDermott.
Hi, thanks again, Elliot, for a very good presentation. I have a couple quick questions. I may have missed this, but what exactly is the name of the organization and the website? And finally, do you check like FreeCycle and Craigslist for possible items?
Sure. So the website is wheelitforwardusa.org. We try to get Wheel It Forward. It's not being used right now. There's a tennis tournament in the Midwest called Wheel It Forward. What I did prior to this was involved in a startup called goto.com, and we owned the URL goto.com, which is just the greatest URL ever. You never realize how many times in a day you say goto until you work at a company called goto.com. So now we're stuck with wheelitforwardusa.org, but the USA part actually may work because people think that we're like across the USA already and we haven't even started. So that was your first question. And I'm sorry, I give me the next 2 questions.
The other one was just the name of your organization, which I'm guessing is Wheel It Forward. But...
Yes, exactly. And your last question was one I really wanted to answer, but I totally forgot.
Do you check FreeCycle and Craigslist as a source of wheelchairs and et cetera?
Yes. So and we've had success, especially on things like OfferUp and Marketplace. OfferUp used to be called something else. I forget what it was. I think it used to be called Let Go. And what we do is, especially for things like knee scooters, where we had 6 knee scooters a month ago, and all of them were being used. And the good news is they've all come back. But for things like that we know are going to be in tremendous demand, and for wheelchairs, transport wheelchairs and stuff like that, we often will send an email, not an email, message to these people and say, hey, we're a group of volunteers. This is what we're doing. We can't pay you cash for what you're doing, for what you're trying to sell, but we can give you a tax receipt and we could come and pick it up. And that's successful over time. It usually takes, a few weeks to play out because people are trying to sell this stuff, and very often it's not so easy. We've collected a lot of things that way. We collected a great knee scooter. We call it the Beast. I mean, it's a $600 knee scooter that you can like do mountain climbing with. I'm not sure anyone's ever going to use it, but yeah, we have these types of things on our radar.
Fantastic. Sounds like you're all over it. Thank you very much.
Larry?
2 questions. Is the organization active in Florida, where obviously there's a huge...
Larry, you want mute?
Service?
You're
So,
breaking up, Larry.
Larry, I heard the first part. Is there about Florida? Was there a second part?
Yeah, is the organization, your organization or similar organizations, predominant and active in Florida, where the elderly population is rather large?
So we're not active there yet. There are places in Florida that do this. One of them is called Clinics Can Help. They're in West Palm Beach. They probably lend out close to 10,000 items a year also. And, obviously within that area, they serve the Jupiter, Florida area and stuff like that. The other thing about Florida is, like, my mother-in-law lives in Century Village in Boca. And so somewhere in that big complex, there's a closet and there's stuff, walkers and things like that, that people could borrow. And I'm sure it's full. If you'd like, so if you go to our website, and this is not ready for prime time at all. If you go to our website and click on the About section on top and go to the bottom of that drop down, those are the places we've found so far across America. And it's organized by state. It's not pretty. One day this is going to be its own website that works very well with just entering your zip code. But one of the issues with what we found is, like I said, there are probably less than 20 places across America that are doing what we're doing. And none of them are connected to each other. And they barely talk to each other. I spoke to a woman in Arizona about a year ago who, her organization kept records of everything by hand in like loose leaves. And she was very excited because she got a $20,000 grant to build a database website, inventory management tracking system that would help her. And when she said that, I had spoken at that point to 50 other places in America, and I could have like knocked my head through the wall, because the Convalescent Aid Society in Pasadena has that system. Why would you reinvent the wheel? You're doing the same exact thing for all practical purposes. Why reinvent it and spend $20,000? So that's the lack of communication in this space. But Florida, my guess is between the different senior centers and stuff is probably well covered. But the truth is if you're a 40-year-old man in Florida who's a construction worker who breaks his ankle, the odds of that person finding a wheelchair to borrow or crutches or whatever is low, and it's very low in most places in the country. Georgia, the state of Georgia, has an organization called FODAC, which is Friends of Disabled Adults and Children. And they have built that out over, 10, 20 years to serve that population. And it's largely a poor population, an economically challenged population, and also a disabled population. And clearly that's the most important thing. They haven't taken it to the next level to really open up to everybody else. And getting back to the Convalescent Aid Society, the 96-year-old place in Pasadena, the only thing that they did wrong over the last 96 years, like I said, it's a fully functional, their overhead is about $700,000-800,000, which pays for itself. They have boards of directors made up of local businessmen, attorneys, bankers, that sort of thing. The only thing they forgot to do over the last 96 years is to open another store 50 or 100 miles down the road, right? They know what they're doing. It works. They're doing a lot of good. How can you sit on a board of directors over that period of time and just say, yeah, this is working great here? It's like McDonald's if they never franchise a McDonald's, right? Yeah, this is good. We're making a living. So that's the only thing that I fault them for. I told that to the CEO. He has aspirations he's more entrepreneurial and maybe opportunistic. And he had actually called me before the pandemic, probably several months before. They had just celebrated their 96th year. They had a luncheon. And he said, Elliot, I just wanted you to know, the board voted, we're opening another place in Burbank, right? And I said, okay, it's a start. And I called him during the pandemic, several months later. And what I figured was, we're starting this here, right? And they're starting a new office there. If I could just get all the information of stuff that they're getting for their new office in Burbank and stuff like that, that's exactly what we need here. And so I called him hoping to get that. And he said, Elliot, we had to put it off. We don't think the funding, the environment and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh man, that is painful. So anyway, if we figure this out, and we're confident that we will, we're going to share this either, with other groups across the country who have a commitment to building something like this in their area. But first things first, I think we're humble enough to know this is not going to be easy. We're going to need some luck. We've had some luck already, and we're going to need to really be smart about it too.
One last point I found very interesting, the anecdote you posted on Next Door Neighbor about taking your mother to Stanford Hospital for a vaccination and wishing you had borrowed one of your wheelchairs.
Yeah. It was like I'm standing there. My mother gets out of the car. I realize we're going to have to do a long walk to the tent, and then it turned out to be a long period of time to get even to the front door. And I'm like, oh, it's like a bad joke that she doesn't have a wheelchair.
Fred Delaney.
Hi, great presentation. Got a question about your local, what do you call your service area, number one? Are you looking just at Fairfield County, or how broadly are you looking that way? And secondly, you mentioned Stanford Hospital. Are you coordinating with the various hospitals within your service area?
Yeah, so our service area is officially Fairfield County, and the local New York areas like Pound Ridge and Armonk and Port Chester. And that's a big area. As I said, we've lent out, 2 things to one person in Bridgeport, and that it just can't be. And it's also far away. So we've set up some pickup points. We have a volunteer in Ridgefield, Connecticut. We have a volunteer in Milford, and they'll collect things. And then we rent a van once every couple of weeks, and we go around to either make deliveries or pickups. And we also will pick up from their houses and bring the stuff here. So for the moment, that's where we are. So Yale New Haven Hospital has found us without us finding them. Firstly, they're not even in Fairfield County. We started to get calls from them a couple of weeks ago. We have a patient, we want to discharge him. We don't have a hospital bed. Strangely, like their supplier of hospital beds, there was a backup. And we could have gotten them a hospital bed, and then they didn't need it. They called us the Friday before Martin Luther King weekend, and they had a patient who was being discharged who needed a wheelchair that will eventually get a wheelchair, but they definitely would have gotten it for 3 or 4 days, and they really needed it, so we got them a wheelchair. We've been in touch with Nuvance, which is the Norwalk Consortium, and they're starting to be a resource for us as well. And yeah, we hadn't heard from Stanford Hospital, and we had been trying, and finally about 2 weeks ago, I said, this week we're getting in touch with them, and I just reached out to all my friends who are doctors, and one of us got us in front of them, and they set up a Zoom call, which I think we had yesterday or the day before. And so again, it's a question of getting people to routinely think of the fact that, hey, this is always an option. There's a library in town for this sort of stuff. If it takes a week or two to get approved to get a hospital bed, and you need it, then we could probably get it to you much quicker. Or if you need a transport wheelchair because your wife is having a procedure, and that when you leave, you'd benefit from a transport wheelchair for a week or two. That's why we're here.
Thank you.
Good. I'll call on my wife next.
Am I on? Good. This is a great thing that you're doing, and I want to know what are some of the volunteer roles with your organization.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. So socially distant volunteer roles, which we need to train people for and wouldn't take long, and we're still kind of figuring out some of that sort of thing, is really just following up with people. So people reach out to us in 4 ways. They reach out to us through our website. We have like a donate equipment form where people could just tell us they have equipment they want to donate. They could tell us where they live. They could tell us what they have. So those people we need to get back to those people. People reach out to us through our inventory management system. In other words, I mentioned at the beginning, you can go on, if you need a transport wheelchair, you go on our system and go through all the process, reserve it, and then we need to figure out that last mile of, are you going to pick it up? Or are we going to have a volunteer get it to you? So they reach out to us through the inventory management system. They reach out to us through our phone system, which I have to tell you, Alan Coulter, who I'm pretty sure is on this call, who is the voice of Late Night with David Letterman, when he heard about what we were doing, he graciously volunteered to be the voice of Wheel It Forward. And when you call up our voice system, you immediately go to voicemail. And you hear Alan's wonderful voice. We've actually had people leave messages of, hi, I need a wheelchair, but I just have to tell you that man's voice, I could listen to it all day. And it's just so great. So thank you, Alan, for that. And so they're reaching out to us through our voice system, and then they're also reaching out to my personal cell phone. And so what our goal is to get all of those reach outs onto a dashboard, like just one page on a website where everybody could see it. And then just as an example, if you wanted to get back to people, the goal would be for you to say, and I didn't hear your name. Joan. Okay. So the goal is, and probably in the not too distant future, for you to click, Joan is taking care of this, and you follow up and do that. But there are a lot of other volunteer opportunities, which is everything from helping us get the word out to local organizations, to helping us, market things. And, in a COVID environment, it's tough. But once this is over, we need help just internally in terms of inventory management stuff. We don't do a lot of repairs on our things. We don't want to go there, but little tweaks like tightening brakes on rollators or that sort of thing. If somebody's handy, there's definitely stuff to help out with. And we're not doing it now because it's not appropriate, but hopefully 6 months from now, when people come back, that there's a lot of those opportunities.
Good, thank you. Joe Andriana.
Yes, something just came to mind. Last year we had a presentation by Shauna Turner,
Yeah.
SEANA. You might want to just write it down. Her presentation is downsizing and tough to toss. She's got two presentations, and in her tough to toss, part of the presentation was a list of different agencies that accept goods that people want to get rid of. And a lot of these agencies that she talked do not take this, do not take that, and medical, devices, goods. You might want to contact her. I just have her email, and it's SEANAGT@AOL.com. And introduce yourself via email and what you do, and if she would put that in part of her presentation, and it might be another area that you can get items for, because again, it's a good, she does a good job presenting different options.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Joe. I'll reach out to her.
Ira Bernstein.
Great service you're offering, Elliot. How do you disinfect equipment that's been returned?
So a few different ways. Firstly, I don't know if any of you have run into Stephanie Palmino, Dr. Stephanie Palmino. She's on the board. She's written our sanitization manual. So it's a combination of a few things. Firstly, we have an industrial steamer, which we steam things, which by all accounts kills everything and also helps you clean things. We use hospital grade germicidal wipes to wipe things down in addition to that. And those are primarily the two ways. We have something called a hub scrub, which is like a very large dishwasher that you could literally put a wheelchair in, and it rinses it off. It hits it with disinfectant also. We just don't have a place to use it. Like, we can't bring that into the senior center.
Oh.
But the other two things, what we found is that the steaming, is kind of a best case scenario. It doesn't really doesn't require chemicals, and like I said, if there's something on a piece, it will loosen it, and it's easy to clean off.
Thank you.
Before I say goodbye,
Jack Halpert's raising his hand, Stu.
Yes,
I
Elliot?
didn't see it. Go ahead.
it's a big hand. Elliot, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Jeff.
Have you ever contacted Habitat for Humanity on exit 31 off 95? They have a massive warehouse, at least 200 feet by 100. They got volunteers, and you can pick up anything there. And they've got some medical equipment, but I have a feeling they'd give you a corner to store stuff if you just talk to them.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Jack. And I have been there, and wow, that place is big, and they have
It's
everything.
unbelievable, isn't it?
Yes, and they
You
do
go
have
there.
medical equipment. I went there because I had heard about it and figured I had to visit. And yeah, I mean, we think we need about 1,500 square feet. We have somebody who's donated 5,000 square feet of like auxiliary warehouse space in case we need it, but it's not a place we can work out of. So yeah, I'll call them when we get off this call.
I
It's
know
a little far for me personally. Like, what's nice about Stamford is that
Yeah.
I live in Stamford. But yeah, no, it makes sense.
Well, I took some stuff that I want to get rid of, and I put it in the back of the wig, and they were so helpful. They take it out for you. And it's an interesting place because you can spend so much time there. They had a whole display of light bulbs.
Yes, yeah, and
4
tiles
light
and
bulbs
tiles.
each for $1. How could
so-
you not buy?
So just so you know, also what we tell people, and this was brought up by others as well, we, just because we have really explored the space locally, we can get things to people to the right places, even if we're not going to use them ourselves. So things like unopened disposable items, we know where we can get those. We delivered like 30 cases of things to person to person. This Sunday, a woman named Roland Halan is coming to my house where I have some stuff. She collects medical supplies, medical equipment that goes to, she runs an organization called AIDS Free Africa. It will go to Cameroon. So people give us syringes, obviously, you know, anything unopened that in America, you really can't do anything else with that stuff. You can't get rid of it. She sends a container to Africa every couple of months, and we have stumbled upon each other, and she's bringing me some hospital beds on Sunday, and I'm giving her all the boxes of stuff that there's nothing else to do with here. So, you know, on some level, you know, we view ourselves as a hub for that area, which is why I definitely want to call Shauna, or I'll email her about some of this other stuff.
I have a question myself. Have you contacted people like orthopedic surgeons? I mean, they are the guys who, you know, probably get asked the question.
Yeah, so that's an embarrassing question for me because I'm dear friends with Dr. Mark Silver, who's an orthopedic surgeon at I don't know if it's ONS or the other big group, and they're owned by larger entities at this point, and so it's you know, he's tried to run it up the flagpole, so to speak, to get the right answer. Just have our brochures or flyers someplace, and COVID situation is not an optimal situation for having brochures out, and we haven't gotten anywhere with that. They, you know, as per what somebody else was saying of, are we competing with other people? You know, it's possible that they make some money by referring people or selling stuff themselves. But so not even thinking of that, right? Because we're not really trying to put people out of business. There are so many people who can't afford this stuff, where the deductible is high or whatever. You know, that's why I think we're not putting those other people out of business, because they can't afford that stuff anyway. So, you know, I think our goal is to keep spreading the word. Jim Himes, Representative Jim Himes, just posted something on Facebook for us unsolicited, and it got 300 likes, and, you know, the phones start ringing more and the reach outs start ringing, you know, showing up more. And again, we need to routinize this concept. You need to borrow a book, you go to Ferguson Library. You know, you need to borrow a wheelchair for a week, a month, 5 years, you got to wheel it forward, and that'll happen. And we're thankful that this, you know, if we just got hit with the avalanche, we would just close up shop. There are times when I'm on the phone and I just see my phone ringing, you know, 3 or 4 times within 15 minutes or half an hour. And, you know, you got to try to stay ahead of the tsunami. So slowly but surely we're getting there, and you know, volunteers wanted, and I could tell you it's impactful work. You feel like, you know, every day this is low-hanging fruit of really helping people, and sometimes you have to figure it out, but if you can help people, the stuff is out there. We didn't buy any of this stuff, and last thing I'll tell you is, the strangest phenomenon for me, as a guy who used to work on Wall Street, is the people donating the stuff, the people who have given you sometimes thousands of dollars worth of equipment, sometimes even more, are strangely more thankful than even the people who are borrowing the stuff. Those people are thankful too, and you're love to help them out. But the idea that they don't have to throw this stuff out, and what I hear every day, multiple times a day, is, you know, mom would be so happy that somebody else could benefit from this, or, you know, I don't need this knee scooter, I'm happy to get rid of it, and just thrilled that somebody else, and it's likely not just one other person who will likely benefit from this stuff. You know, it's likely many other people over time, because the stuff has a long lifespan in terms of much of it.
So are you a 501c3 organization?
So good question. We're not yet. Basically, it takes 6 to 9 months to become a 501c3. We have stumbled upon a great concept as far as I'm concerned. And so what we have is what's called a fiscal sponsor, which is an umbrella organization where they are the 501c3. All of the money we collect goes and spend goes through them. In other words, they handle all the money. If somebody makes a cash donation, they get a tax receipt from FJC. If somebody donates equipment, they get a tax receipt from FJC. And it saves us a lot of money. They charge us about 4%, which sounds like a lot, but A, we're not looking to raise millions of dollars. And B, if we were to have need a bookkeeper, and if we were to need our own audit, we estimate that would probably cost, $50,000 to $100,000 a year between those two things. They handle all that stuff. They handle the 990. Everything flows up to their books. They are the fiscal sponsor for over 100 different organizations. And if anybody's thinking of ever, you have a not-for-profit idea, you want to make masks for the COVID situation and raise some money to do that, no need to start your own thing. You just go to a fiscal sponsor that's reputable, and they handle pretty much everything for you. It took us about 4 months to get approved. There was a lot of due diligence, and we have a lot of serious people on our board. It still, it wasn't easy, but it was good because, like, as I mentioned before, I don't know what I'm doing in the not-for-profit arena, and they're the double check. They're the eyes and the ears to make sure everything is done as it should be. One interesting thing, because I mentioned Representative Himes, there's some sort of rule where you're not allowed to associate a not-for-profit with political campaigns or supporting politicians. And so when he put out a Facebook post like 2 or 3 days ago saying he was inspired by what we were doing, and it got like 300 or 400 likes. I called FJC and I said, is it okay, by the way, for us to share that and just thank him for helping us raise awareness? And they felt perfectly fine with that. There's no political campaign going on. We're not supporting him. But it's great to have them as a resource as well. And there's somebody named Henry Brubel who lives in Stanford, who is on the board of FJC. And I don't know Henry well. I spoke to him more recently, but they do great things as well.
Great. I imagine if anyone has any ideas that popped into their heads about places you might market to, they should probably contact you, or they could contact me and I'll contact you for that.
That would be wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Elliot, no more hands. Unless Ira, you still have a question? His hand.
No.
Okay, your hand was
My
up.
hand's not up.
Okay. So Elliot, thank you very, very much for an extremely interesting presentation and a lot of time answering a lot of good questions. So again, thank you from our organization, and we'll be in touch. And back to you, Joe.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. And I look forward to keeping you posted on our progress. And yeah, just let me give you my cell phone number, just so you all have it. Because if you call the main Wheel Forward number, you're going to get straight to voicemail. So my cell phone number is 203-705-1600.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great day.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Joe?
Thank you, Elliot.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
guys, unless there is anything else that somebody wants to bring up in the next couple of seconds. Not seeing any. As always, stay well, stay safe, get those shots, and persevere in trying to locate an appointment. And we'll see everyone next week.
Bye.
Bye.